I'm surrounded by ghosts. I'm surrounded by saints. Surrounded by folks who care, who speak their truths. Chiseled from stone to leave no one alone. Pilgrim, you've journeyed so far. Your eyes have been opened, and you carry the scars of those who seek and unswervingly hold what's more precious than gold: peace, hope, and love. I'm surrounded by saints, surrounded by folks who care, who speak their truths, chiseled from stone to leave no one alone.
There's 20 stones here in this stone circle, and we're sat on the flattest. You got enough room there?
I'm okay, yeah.
Thank you. David's perched.
Yeah. So we're in Cornwall. It's a summer bank holiday, although not in Scotland where I work, so I am officially working today. There is a public holiday in England for you English employees. And we're about 5 miles from Land's End at the southwesternmost tip of Cornwall.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the end of England.
And as you can see, Cornwall this morning is overrun with tourists. It's very crowded here at the moment. The news reports are about Cornwall being the most busiest season in the history. Post-COVID, everyone desperate to get on holiday and international travel more difficult, so 65 million people in the UK, many of them have been heading to Cornwall apparently this summer. But we've managed to find somewhere devoid not only of tourists but of anybody. Yeah. It is 8 o'clock in the morning. We did get up at 5 a.m. to be here for sunrise this morning, which helps. But it still feels like the whole world is ours.
Do you feel funny sat in the middle of the stone circle?
I feel a bit bad having breakfast here. Having set up the stove and prepared food, I feel maybe that's inappropriate.
I was thinking about it when you said, is it all right to eat in the stone circle? And I was thinking, well, people eat in churches. You know, it's funny, the sacred and what we will do and won't do.
But I'm probably also, would probably even be a bit unsure about whether I should walk into the middle of it. I don't know, some feeling of my worth or sense of place. To me on the outside normally, I'm looking in. Should I be in the middle of something like this? Too much analysis for a Monday morning.
Anyway, David, we're here to do a keynote.
We are. But I don't know what to say.
Well, we've been asked to talk about songwriting and filmmaking, which have been central to everything we've done really over the last 20 years. Okay, we've written papers, but often it's about insights that we've got through writing songs. It's about songs, how songs have connected our participants to students.
Well, I think for me, part of it at least is a case of having to unlearn what you've been taught. You know, U2 on their Acting Baby tour 30 years ago, one of their many visual images was that flashed up on the screen was everything you know is wrong. And that's, at this point in my life, I don't think everything is wrong, but I think a lot of what I've taken on board, internalized, or been taught explicitly isn't actually true, or not true for me at this time. So I think for me it's been unlearning a lot about how I've been taught to do research, which came from a very scientific heritage, moving into social science, but still methodologically oriented towards following a set of procedures, and this is what we do for research, which isn't the case, is it? I knew when I was 18, the first months I started writing songs with no training and no education in music whatsoever. I knew that something meaningful was coming from this. I was surprised continually. Every time I wrote a song, I was surprised by something. So you could see that as a discovery, personal insight, learning, something that I hadn't anticipated or planned for. It wasn't following a procedure. I remember Simon that I used to play music with. We sort of learned our way together with recording and writing, and he always said with recording you'd figure out a way to record a song. You think, okay, I've got it now, I'll do that again for the next song, but it won't work.
Yeah.
The methodology for recording didn't work either.
And that's the same as qualitative research and autoethnography.
So Simon had to find, or we had to find in the studio, a new way of working, a new practice for each and every song we wanted to record. We learned from what went before, but we can't just duplicate it. And I think that increasingly is the way that we do research, qualitative research, autoethnography included.
Yes.
It's like we're trying to find a new method every time we do a project.
We're called to find a new method, but we're not trying to do a new method because it ticks the innovative box.
No.
That's a difference in that.
It's necessary to make the project
Yes.
have a chance of working,
Yeah.
be successful.
We don't start with a blueprint.
Yeah. But I think it was Picasso who's often quoted as saying every painting is a work of research, it's a piece of research.
Yeah.
I think that's not unusual for artists across different genres. I always quote Springsteen's line from No Surrender. We learn more from a 3-minute record than we ever learnt in school. We're doing an inquiry. It's an inquiry. When I'm writing a song, it's prompted by a question. The question may not be explicit. It may not even be conscious. But there's something. There's a search. There's a seeking going on that is the fuel for a song. Sometimes in the research sense that is explicit. When I think about Whirlpool, I was thinking about those young people's stories, some of whom I'd interviewed, some of who you'd interviewed, and I read the transcripts. Their experiences of bullying or abuse or trauma.
So how did that song come about?
Well, we were immersed in the project that we were doing with Tamara and Kate and John and Erica, looking at young people, so they were 14 and 15-year-olds predominantly, their experiences of bullying, sexting, online abuse, any kind of discrimination around sex, sexuality, gender identity. So we were hearing a small number of individuals' experiences.
And we also went away for a weekend with our colleagues and shared stories, and that's where we brought in, look, if we're going to ask all these young people about their childhood experience, we need to do this for ourselves. We need to ask ourselves these questions.
That's true.
As well.
So we're also hearing glimpses of our own pasts, each other's pasts. I was also in quite an intensive psychotherapy at the time, and I was considering my own past, but not in the sense of vivid memories. I didn't have specific incidents or memories in my mind at all. They weren't there for me, but some of these young people did have specific things they talked about. So I think that song was definitely a case of these things have been mulling around for quite a few months for me. I found a chord progression, unusual chords, unusual rhythm that had kind of stuck, a couple of changes anyway really on the progression. And that's often for me, it was playing and almost meditating on those chords, just playing them and playing. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for, I suppose, in a chord. It's something that it doesn't tire. I don't tire of it. It may only be 2 chords, but it's just something that I kind of stay in, and that I think allows me to start to investigate some of these issues. And some of them were coming from those young people's stories, but that was more possibly a prompt for me to reflect on my own embodied memories, my own subconscious rememberings, feelings and emotions, the sort of emotional tone and landscape of those things. And actually what came about through that song, which I'd never had before or since, were some memories or stories that came of very vivid events in the lyrics of the song that I don't actually remember. So that exploration led to these scenes that I kind of know are real, but I don't know.
They're very powerful. Is it all right if I have some of this?
Yes, finish off.
They're very powerful lyrics. Do you remember how it starts?
The opening lines are "Believe in me, and I'll try to." I don't know whether that lyric has come from their stories and hearing you talk about interviewing them together, or whether it's come from my own life, but I know it's in my own life.
With all the other things that you've described before. So when we come to make films, there's already a lot gone on in the body.
Well, that's back to the metaphor, of the stone circle that you talked about, this continuity over time, the history that we step in, that we're born into, the sedimentary layers, I think is the expression. So you've talked about that, and I think that's very literal, the stone circle. These stones have been here for, I don't know how many centuries, but many centuries, not just 200 or 300 years.
No.
Not just 200 or 300. So I think it's quite possible for forms of communication, especially non-verbal ones, to affect us in a subconscious ways by connecting to things we're not conscious of ourselves, either in our own lives or possibly things we've inherited. I across generations. Generational trauma is one example of that, in a negative form, but there are also positive things as well. This is the feeling you talked about of always feeling held. So we've got the young people in the interviews, we've got their stories in the lyrics, tangentially or sort of, not tangentially,
Well,
as an inspiration. We've got their words in,
Yes.
then taken and performed by actors.
What you're doing now is going through the very layered process. So there was you with the song, then you had recorded it, then I put down backing vocals, and you put other musical pieces to it, and then we wanted to make a film out of it. So we go looking, hunting, searching for what will support the telling of the. So it starts with the song. So in Portishead, there's some huge lock gates, and when they open them, this torrent of water comes through, and it is a big whirlpool. And suddenly it's like, yes, this is the whirlpool. I found it. I have found it. And then around Portishead, there are lots of wonderful art outside images in steel and various other materials, and so I again videoed those, and they worked really well. And then I had this picture of, I suppose this is more closer to the lyrics of a child in the water, and I asked my niece to come over, and we went to the swimming pool at night, and I just said, Jessie, just go underwater so you actually see her face going under.
And so powerful, those images for me.
Shall we listen to the song?
Yeah.
I wasn't bullied until year 5, just stupid names. I were a little fat, but lunchtime, and I were trying to have my lunch. Everyone kept coming over and going,
how many calories are in that?
Bet it's loads because you're that fat.
so I just put it back down. Didn't eat lunch for the next few weeks.
I got beat up by 3 lads, cost me size.
Chubby.
What's in
Just day in, day out. Day out, day in, day out.
Believe in me and I'll try to. Will you follow me to the ends of this whirlpool I'm tumbling through? Baby underwater, he is crying for his mother, there's nowhere. Reaching for the surface and he gets there just to be plunged in again. So who will strike for the anvil until he learns how there is no love lost here?
Being called frigid by the boys. Well, it stopped now, but it used to happen most of the week, mainly break and lunchtime. This guy was pressuring me and asking me. But the girls, I just say it's my business, mind yours. Like it's my business, they say.
No, you going out with him, having sex with him.
They want the gossip, don't they, the girls? They like gossip, and when that happens, I feel very small. There's a lot of them against me. You would get wound up by it all and get upset.
Strengthen me and I'll try to grow new wings, fly out from the childhood I never knew. Swimming through the water, child is trying for his father, there's nowhere. Shouting dim and distant, he is kicking for the surface, bound up in fear. So who'll strike for the anvil until he knows how there is no love lost here? There is no, there is no. There is no, there is no.
And I don't know whether you want to talk about the writing of the song or the making of the film or the just reflect.
Well, all of those things. I just feel that there are probably three things. It was coming here, I think, laid something down in here. And it gave me a message. It taught me something. It said, look, we're still here or something. So it put something here.
These stones and this place that's ancient.
Yes.
Just the fact that it's been here for so long and it's continued.
So that was the first thing. The second thing was then 6 months later, so I'd forgotten about this, although we'd filmed here. Stacey Hellman-Jones, the International Congress of Qualitative Inquiry. It's a special interest group in autoethnography, and we were asked to be in the last group of performers thinking about and being inspired by the future. And our piece starts with the naming of 4 stones. It returned and made an appearance, and I don't know why, but there was something, the piece that we were called to do looked to the future of autoethnography, and our piece was Stand Firm. This is what we were talking about and doing. And then what prompted the song was death, and the lyrics of the song began their genesis as I'm surrounded by death, I'm surrounded by ghosts, and that's what I had, that's all I had of the song. And there was a close family relative of yours that had 2 sons had died. I'm really affected by any mother, by her story.
Losing 2 out of 3 sons.
If there is such a thing as a natural order, that goes against it. So I was really moved by that. And I was very moved by a friend of ours in America who's a musician, and he's played music with his dad all of his life. His father played the guitar and the violin. They sound wonderful together. And his father's death, and him being so grief-stricken by that. And that's in my body as well. Every day on the news, COVID still taking lives and death. And I'm thinking, because we're going into the International Congress of Autoethnography in the UK, and I'm thinking about critical autoethnography, and a delegate at that conference said to me a few years ago, "Oh, your work isn't critical." And I am thinking, as I'm writing songs and I'm thinking about what I would perform, is this being critical? Is this critical autoethnography? Or am I just doing fluffy stuff? Am I just... and our conversations about our lives being so completely different. That was what was going on. And I'm feeling grief for just the death, it's everywhere.
Well, I mean, my response from what you've said now, that it absolutely is critical, that absolutely isn't fluffy stuff. The death and the suffering and the loss in our personal lives and at a global scale through the pandemic, this clearly is some of the most difficult, the opposite of fluffy and soft. I think there is a mistake being made if we think that critical means you have to be exclusive, bound by heavy theory, intimidating, black, negative. I think we can also do critical research and try to create hope.
And that's where I think I am, definitely.
Well, I think you've done that with that song. It's a beautiful, moving song that definitely touches on for me too those issues, but it does it in a way that I want to play the song again. So it allows me and invites me to live with those things for a moment, but it does so in a way that I come out of it enriched, with a sense of meaning, with a sense of connection, that I'm in touch with emotions that might otherwise have been asleep or might have been pressing them down. So I think for me that is very much an example of critical autoethnography, but I also think it is, I think you've written a classic there as a song. I think it has a potential to connect to people who aren't just critical autoethnographers, who aren't just autoethnographers, who aren't academics. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that's the real role for our work when Amber Johnson and our autoethnographers on mute. If so, how do we unmute? Well, there's I think one way.
But I wasn't thinking about, in fact it was the last thing on my mind, trying to write a song that was all of those things that you just said it is. I was just responding to what was in my body.
But I think that is the way. I remember a poet. I'm always a bit suspicious when people call themselves poets. I don't know why. But she did call herself a poet, and she wrote poetry. And we were talking about the writing process in a round circle, small group at the public engagement performance conference a few years ago. Actually. Yes. And I shared with her that actually for me, when I'm writing a song, it's very much personal. I'm writing for myself, my own inquiry, the Mary Oliver poem of a man who has many answers often shares graciously his findings, while the man who has only questions to comfort himself makes music. That's very much where I'm at with this. So the writing process is very much a personal thing, and the poet's response was, well, if you do that, you're only really talking to yourself, aren't you? And I kind of was completely silenced by that and somewhat humiliated, I suppose. But then I also remember Paul Simon, one of the great white male songwriters of the 20th century, saying that, very much he's his own audience when he writes a song, and he sees his response to that as being potentially a sign that others maybe will respond. So I think it's very common. Paul Weller always talks about writing songs for himself, and then, some of them connect with other people, and that's fantastic. So I think what you did is, just because you were focusing on your own experience and writing in that very personal way, doesn't mean it can't have meaning for others.
Well, I know Yes. Look, shall I show you the shell?
It is a shell. Nobody's home.
Isn't it pretty?
I wonder how it got there, though. Someone must have crawled up there in the shell and then perished, leaving the shell behind. Unless, of course, human interference or a bird just put the shell there, perhaps. Hello.
Hello.
Share your wisdom.
Yes. I am. It took me ages, that song. Just this pilgrim. As soon as that came to my mind, the song had its body. You've journeyed so far. Your eyes have been opened really moved me back here to this stone circle, and the connection and the lines that run from our history into our past and onto the future. This is when all this came back again, and that real, I suppose, not heaviness, but there's the standing firm thing again.
Yeah, it's a foundation to me, is what that suggests. And you know, you're talking about the Pilgrim's Way, the walk that begins here, goes down to Spain.
Santiago de Compostela.
Right. I like that. I like that. There's been so much change, so much uncertainty. Something that is solid, you know, that actually we are, you know, yeah, if you want, you can be a pilgrim. That's how you can see it. See yourself, be seen by others.
And one of the most difficult things, I think, is in songwriting and music in generally, is when something is sort of finished, to add to it, change it, or take it somewhere else. And so it's about that time that Stacey and Dan asked us to give this keynote and asked us to write a song.
I think it was the right song for the moment. It speaks to us both, and we offer it to others, and it speaks to the times, you know, without knowing who's hearing it. We know the times that you're all living in, everybody's living in. And you had a recording, quite a primitive recording, but it was incredibly evocative how you had recorded it. And I actually saw it with the beginnings of the film as well, the imagery that you created from here. So and I played you some of Springsteen's Nebraska album the other day. You know, he recorded this on a 4-track cassette machine in the early 80s, then went to the studio with the band to do the Springsteen version of it, but they didn't work and he didn't like them, and he used the cassette recordings as the album. And it's intimate, the atmosphere reeks. It's so moving, the sense of place and ambience to it, and you'd created that, yet it was technically problematic. Plus, it wasn't necessarily finished, the song. Right?
So how did you get yourself into a place where you could contribute? Because I think what you've done is fantastic.
Thank you.
And really does contribute to it.
Well, I spent a few weeks just telling myself that I couldn't do it. As usual. I always feel like whenever I've written a song, I'll never write another one. I cannot write another song. I've written hundreds, but every time it's the same, and then I do. So I wanted to do that for you, but I really didn't want to screw the song up, which it was really likely that I would, because it was so great already, and what can you add? So I just thought, I can't do it. I didn't touch the guitar, I didn't even attempt it. I tried to learn the chords and wrote out the words and tried to sort of just get into playing the song. The key's wrong for me, so I had to change the key. Messed around with that, and then one sleepless night, I got up very early, and I knew you were still asleep, so I went into the living room and closed the doors and played really, really quietly on the acoustic guitar. Just like whispered it, played hardly touching the strings. Just thought, I know very often for me, when a song changes and I can't figure out how it's changed, it's because it hasn't changed, it stayed in the same chord, at the same chord. So I thought maybe I can use that. I don't want to have more chords already, it's already rich. Maybe I can stay on one of the other chords. So that's what we did. After the Pilgrim section, stayed on, it's a C shape, but it's actually an F chord, and just went between the F and the G, and just I'd been thinking about it and angsting about it for a few weeks, and then it just kind of was done in about 60 seconds. And the words came out quite quickly, and they were very much, we'd written about it in the collaborative autoethnography chapter, which the books had come out. And it was something from Stacey Holman-Jones and Tony Adams' article from 10 years ago, I think, when they talked about, very moved me deeply actually, talked about we're writing for you, the people we've lost. And they've both been open about some of the people they've lost in their lives, and that was surrounding us. You know, it's been very much in my life too recently. and I liked the thought that the song was an offering to them, and more so perhaps to the people who are trying to manage without the people they care about now. You know, and for me, water's really important. The ocean, moving water, waves, flowing water, that's always moving, always flowing. It's like these stone circles, it's always here, it's always there. So this imagery of flowing, moving, flowing water, and we walk for you, we move for you, like the water, and then it's a bit, I felt maybe it's a bit cliched, but the sky, a night sky, you know, a bright night sky, how can that be? How can a dark sky be bright? Yet it can. And we can dance with those stars, or they're always there. We will dance again with you. And then get the hell out of there back to that lovely Surrounded by Ghosts section. And I wasn't sure if it worked. I felt vulnerable singing it. I couldn't really sing it. Struggled to sing it because the key was, you couldn't sing it because it was then too high because I'd written the wrong. So we had to sort of try and make it work in the studio, which I think the latter version we have, it's okay, it works. And then it's such a lovely feeling when the different voices and the extra guitars fade away, and it's just back to, you have that little pause and you're picking, and then it's back into that, you're singing just your voice and the guitars. So yeah.
It's so peaceful here, isn't it? It's interesting that you used the word dance as well, because this is what it was, this stone circle, one of the myths that are attached to it, is the maidens came out and danced.
I don't know why I'm feeling it so much now. It's a bit of, but yeah, under the sky, you know, at night. What do we have, you know, that continues? Who can we dance with? Who can we dance with in lockdown, you know, in social isolation and distancing? And lots of people, several friends of mine have been on their own, living on their own through this. Who do you dance with, you know? I'm thinking of Elise Pinot's beautiful film, the International Congress of Autoethnography, about her meditations at that time, living on her own in Illinois, in the States. And there's beauty in that, as well as challenge or difficulty or pain.
And that something beautiful can come out of pain and grief.
I don't feel like I have a choice in that. I have to make that. I have to find it or make it for myself. But I also would like our work to share a bit of that, part of it at least, you know. And I think that is critical autoethnography, because actually it was a beautiful line from a Marianne Moore poem. Hope is only hope when all reason for hope has vanished, or something to that effect, you know. So in some ways, to build towards those things, to offer those things, to strive for those things, that is the most critical work you can do at a time of great difficulty or suffering or hopelessness.
Nice, slow, just
I love you, but I drown.
Who owns your memories? Where do they hide? Would dragons slay them if fates collide? The dreams you once shared were written in stone. Watch them now sinking, but you're not alone. So raise raise your voices, let's sing together. The heart is willing to stem the tide. A voice in the night, calling your name. A candle lights the face, and there is no shame. So raise your voices, let's sing together. The heart is willing to stem the tide. Angels hear our prayer. We know there's a truth. Cushions for the journey. My hands, they are open. So raise your voices, let's sing together. The heart is willing to stem the tide.